So as I mentioned last video, Steam are doing a massive sale on basically every single Bethesda game. That could be Bethesda created games or also Bethesda published games, as in Dishonored, Deathloop and Doom, but then there's also their own ones which are Elder Scrolls and Fallout. And out of that sale, I've done quite a few of the franchises, not necessarily the whole entire franchise, maybe just the odd game, but I've never checked out any of the Doom series. It has been on my radar for quite a long time though. I was going to do Doom 2016, and that was quite a long time ago, and I still haven't got round to doing it, and I most likely will do that in the future, but here we are, starting off with Doom Eternal. So like I've done with quite a few of the series on the channel, I do the most recent game in the series, the most up-to-date version, and it just seems like I'll go back in time. It's a weird order, I know, but just because it's the most modern version of that series, I think it's a great way to open up the series for anyone, because the older games, because they're older, not necessarily everyone will like that, because they're not used to that older sort of style, and they want the modern day graphics and gameplay and everything, and eventually I will get onto those of course. But here we are with Doom Eternal, which came out in 2020, March 2020, and from what I remember, I think it didn't actually get a lot of good reviews. A lot of people didn't actually like the game, or that's what I thought anyway, because that's what I heard. But looking back now, a lot of people actually really love this game. It gets great reviews on Steam and IGN and everything, and for some reason, back in the day, I just thought it didn't do well and it flopped, but apparently not, which made it even better for me to go into the game, because it's not controversial, it's not got any negative look on it, and I think that's also good for anyone that is starting the series just like me. Now I want to start off with the gameplay, because that is the biggest aspect of Doom for sure, and what I sort of focused on when going into it, and it's the same with Warframe and Destiny. I know they also have good running stories through them all, and they're just as good as the gameplay, but the main focus, because it's a looter shooter, or that style of looter shooter games, the gameplay is what everyone loves, and just what pops out to me anyway. And I did Warframe, and I actually really enjoyed that game. The only thing with it is that it is quite grindy. I mean, for a 10-year-old game, it's held up an insane amount, and it still has a massive community now, and you guys actually really seem to enjoy that video. Whereas going into Doom Eternal, from what I heard, it wasn't as grindy, and because it's a newer game, there is a lot more stuff involved. And I just want to say now that the experience, at least with Doom Eternal and Warframe, I think I had a lot more fun with Doom Eternal, as in I was just addicted to it because I always kept on coming back, and I had really long sessions compared to what I did with Warframe, where I might play a bit and then come back off and then go on. But yes, something with Doom, and I think the visuals do help, and of course it is a newer game, so the graphics are incredible, which I'll get more into later, but it just held my attention fully for the whole time, and I had a lot of fun playing Doom Eternal. Now for anyone that doesn't know what Doom is, or the style of game it is, it's a first-person shooter game. Now I did mention earlier, with Warframe that is more on the looter shooter side, and they do sort of cross over a bit, as in they're similar sort of gameplay styles. I know Doom Eternal isn't a looter shooter, but it is similar in the way that the gameplay and the look of the game is so chaotic, and you know, there's double jumping, and the gameplay is very intense, and just the visuals are crazy, and it does mean your gameplay does upgrade over time the more you play, just like in Warframe, just like in Destiny and Borderlands, all those sort of games, so they do link in that way. So for anyone that's played those sort of games, it's very similar, and if you enjoyed those, then you'll most likely enjoy Doom. But what stood out to me compared to the other games I played is that Doom Eternal does focus a lot more, or does involve a lot more, of the parkour side. And that also goes with some sort of puzzles in a way. So there's a lot of areas in the game that is actually different to some of the earlier Doom games, where you have to be fast on climbing on ledges and really work on your timing and the pacing, which will then unlock secret areas or just the next level, and you actually have to do them, they're not like an optional thing, but you can do more if you want to get certain items that are behind a barrier, as well as also you killing a bunch of enemies, which I'll get into. The parkour does go with that, and it's not even just parkour at one point, there's actually some puzzles in a way, where you have to hit certain stuff to open up another place, and then you also have to work on your timing in that. It's like a timed sort of sequence. So I thought I'd mention that first in the gameplay, because that's an area that of course not everyone is gonna love, and maybe if you've played the earlier Doom games, where it's mainly all just combat and shooting, I know not everyone does like those sort of puzzles. I mean, it's the same with Uncharted in a way, because I loved that game, the story is amazing, and I think everyone can agree on that, but I know a lot of people that are, you know, putting off that game just because of the puzzles, and that's the only reason. So I thought I'd mention that. It's very straightforward, and you eventually get it. It's quite simple. and it just switches up the gameplay instead of just constantly shooting, which I loved. I think it was a really cool idea. Next thing I want to mention, which is also an aspect that is important to a lot of people, is the difficulty selection. So it's good to know that there is plenty of difficulties to choose from. It's not just, 3 tiers. There's actually 6 different levels to choose from. Now I must admit, I did play on the second to lowest one. When playing these sort of games, I am more laid back and casual, I must admit. Sometimes I might listen to music in the background, and I don't want that intense, hardcore gameplay, but for anyone that does, trust me, that is here as well. But I did appreciate that it is, you can choose it. It's not just hardcore, so it's just that small selection of gamers. It's basically, it can be for anyone. So you start at I'm Too Young to Die, which is of course the easiest one, and then Hurt Me Plenty is the next, and then Ultra Violence, then Nightmare, then Ultra Nightmare, and then an Extra Life mode. So I love how flexible it is, and you can of course change it anytime as well, and I thought I'd mention that for anyone that is wondering. But no matter what difficulty you play, it is going to be a little bit harder the more you play the game, just like with all these similar games in that genre. But also your character does upgrade and become stronger over time, and you unlock new skills and weapons, which I'll go into more detail on, and then when you open up into another location, it will be that slight bit harder. A very key part of the combat is glory kills, which you get straight away, and that means if you damage an enemy enough, they do become staggered, and then they flash to blue, and if you get closer it's orange, which then means you can perform a glory kill, which kills them instantly and gains you health, and the amount of that depends on how low you are already. And there are upgrades to be made to this with runes, which I'll get into. For example, the range can be increased, or the speed, and a brand new type of melee attack which links into glory kills is the blood punch, which charges up your normal melee punch through getting glory kills on enemies. Of course, it is a lot stronger and deals more damage than a normal swing. It's about 2 glory kills to get one, and you can see the charge through the bar in the UI. And another aspect of gameplay is the runes, which have been in previous Doom games now, and you find these spread throughout the world and can choose out of 9 different ones when you find one. Now in Doom 2016, you were actually forced to perform a rune trial to unlock one, whereas now you don't have to do that. Now these go by Savagery, and that performs glory kills faster. Seek and Destroy improves the distance in which you can perform a glory kill. Blood Fueled gains you a Spood Beast after doing a glory kill. Air Control will increase the movement control in the air. Dazed and Confused increases how long enemies will be staggered for. Saving Throw will allow you to survive a death blow and slow down time for you afterwards. Chrono Strike will also allow you to slow down time when aiming in midair, and there is a cooldown on this. Equipment Friend means if you kill with a piece of equipment, then the recharge time is decreased. Punch and Reave means enemies killed by a blood punch shockwave drop health for you, and 3 of the runes can be equipped at one time and switched in and out at any time. If we move on to the weapons, looking at face value, there is actually not that many. For a game like Doom, I always thought there was a massive selection in weapons, but there actually isn't. There's only 9 weapons to unlock. So there's the shotgun, which is quite self-explanatory, a very close range gun of course, but also the mods do help a lot with this for the whole entire game. So although it's only a shotgun and it's very early on you get that, you'll be switching through all the weapons throughout the whole game, which I did quite like, because obviously some games like Destiny, there's an overwhelming amount of weapons to unlock, and although that is good, you're not always going to be using the same ones then, you're always going to be changing it up. Of course, some are way better than others, whereas in Doom, they're all really good, and there's not one that, is way better than the other, and you'll always be rotating through these 9 weapons through the entire game, whether that be early game or late game. I can assure you that, for example, the shotgun, you'll still be using when you almost complete the game. And some people love that you can always change your weapon in Destiny and you're never really used to one gun, and that's fine, and I love the fact that it's massive in that game, but I do prefer having the small weapon selection so it's not too overwhelming, and you're always used to the feel of the guns as well. So one of the mods for the shotgun, for example, is sticky bombs, which can add on to that gun, and these help with, for example, bigger enemies that have a weak point. The 2 main ones, which are quite early on in the game and they're great for, are the arm cannons. So there's 2 massive arm cannons on Mancubus, and then there's the Revenant, which has rocket launchers on its shoulders, and they're perfect for taking them out if you obviously aim at the weak spot. And then weaker enemies, you can literally shoot them once with the shotgun and then they'll stagger because it has a bomb in its mouth, which obviously means you can then glory kill it. And then there's mod 2, which adds full auto, which You don't do it all the time because there is a charge on it, but you basically spray and pray with the shotgun, and it's not bad. Then there's heavy cannon, the next gun in the game. It has a quicker fire rate, of course, than shotguns. One of the mods for this is the precision bolt, which is quite good. You're not going to be doing it all the time because it's slower and it has a scope. It's great for weak points as well, with 12 shots at a time before you have to reload. The plasma rifle is a great weapon to use. It goes off plasma energy, and one of the examples of the mods for this is the microwave beam, which is a beam of plasma energy that locks onto any enemy you aim at, which will then tick damage on them, and if you do it for long enough, they eventually explode, and that also damages nearby enemies. I'm not going to go through every single mod, don't you worry. I was just going to do some examples, and I'm just showing you that although there is 9 guns, it may sound like a small amount, but the mods just change it completely, and you'll always be switching through all these guns. So the rest are the rocket launcher, then there's the super shotgun. It's basically like a double barrel shotgun instead, and it has more mobility to it. The ballista is pretty good, again great at weak points as well, and it's basically a bolt thrower. Then there's the chain gun. It sort of acts like a minigun in a way, and there are 9 guns, but 2 of them are super weapons, one of them being the BFG 9000, and is great on massive crowds of enemies and is extremely powerful. And both super weapons don't actually have mods to them, but because they're so overpowered they don't need them. The other one is the Unmaker, I think that's how you pronounce it. The only thing is that I haven't unlocked it. I haven't used that one yet, so I'm not too sure about it, and that's also because I found out that you have to unlock it by completing all 6 Slayer gates, which isn't like the main campaign, it's an optional thing to do, but maybe eventually I'll go on to unlock that. So 8 main weapons, and then the 2 super weapons. There's actually not a lot. There is a side weapon on the side. It's not really a main weapon, and that's the chainsaw, but it shouldn't go unnoticed because it can only be used on small enemies, not all of them, and only has a max ammo of 3, so you're always going to be picking up more ammo. But one of the best things about it is that if you kill an enemy with it, that enemy then drops a massive refill for all your ammo on all your weapons, so it's actually great, to be honest. Oh, and also the flame belch, which isn't again a main weapon, but you'll always have it, and you press R to use that, and it's basically a flamethrower. Again, it doesn't have an awful lot of ammo, and you'll have to pick up more. It does have a cooldown, you can't use it all the time, so again it's a smaller one, but also one of the best aspects about this is that if you ignite enemies, they also drop armor. So again, they may seem like small weapons, but they actually have great benefits to them, and that goes with every single weapon in the game. There's also sentinel crystals that you can find around the map. They also worked sort of similar to runes. It's basically more upgrades on skills. That could be your health, your armor, or ammo, and they're also attached to perks, so if you make 2 upgrades on that perk, then it will be enabled. So basically all of what I mentioned you find around the map and just going through levels, so you may miss them, so you have to sort of explore a bit. And there's also smaller collectibles and hidden secrets that you can also explore. If you see a question mark, that's a small little collectible of an album, like a vinyl record, just a small little collectible to find. And as I mentioned earlier, there are Slayer gates, which are optional sort of levels in the game, not part of the main campaign. You don't have to do them, but they are extremely difficult to do, and it's like a purple area on the map. Codexes are small little red pages that are on fire, again just a small little collectible to add, and other small, you know, secret encounters with some enemies that can give you weapon upgrade points. So it's great that there's a good amount of exploration that can, you know, be optional. You don't have to do it, but that mixes in with all the main campaign levels, and they're fun. Now, I'm one that loves story games, but with games like this, like Warframe and Destiny, it isn't my main focus, and it's also not going to be the main focus of this review, like I said. The gameplay, and I think for a lot of people, is the main aspect of these Doom games, or just first-person shooters and looter shooters in general. And I heard that with Doom Eternal, even if you've played the earlier Doom games, and that does help as well, and of course I haven't, I just went into Eternal, the whole franchise does have a lot to it in terms of the lore and just backstory. And even if you've played Doom 2016, the Doom Eternal story just adds on a lot of stuff without really explaining it and why it's actually happened. It doesn't give like a summary of the previous games or a backstory for any new players as well, so there's a lot of stuff involved that is quite difficult to follow anyway, whether you've played the game or you've not, or if you're someone that doesn't focus on the story in general. So I still see it as this side sort of piece of content. You don't have to focus on it if you don't want to, and I know not everyone wants that. And for me, for these games, it's one of the only games where I don't focus on the story as much. It's also why I don't mind playing Eternal for the first game I've played in the franchise, because it is a direct sequel to 2016 Doom. So knowing that before, I I knew I wouldn't know an awful lot about the story. But to give a quick plot for anyone that is wondering, and also for anyone that is new like me, you play as the Doomslayer, that's the main protagonist of the game, and hell has taken over the world basically. I think it's 60% of the world has been overrun by demons, and it's basically you against all of them in a way. And you're this fully overpowered and, you know, heavily armoured guy, just basically going ham on these demons. And the whole goal is to basically stop the hell from taking over. I mean, it's very easier said than done, and that's why it links into the gameplay of you becoming stronger and upgrading your character even more to stand a better chance against all these different types of hell creatures. I won't go through every single enemy in the game, but I'll split them up into categories, which they are, because a great thing about this is that, okay, there's not a lot of weapons, but that doesn't matter, as I mentioned, but there is an awful lot of enemies to discover, because it's basically the whole entirety of hell, so there's so many different crazy creatures to find. And the easiest ones are ambient, so there's only 3 enemies in there, which is Buff Totem, Cubal and Tentacle. And then there's Fodder, which has a few more to them, that's basically a bit harder. The third section or category is Heavy, so there are the heavy enemies that you go up against. A lot more stronger, a lot bigger. And then after that it goes on to Super Heavy, which is of course even heavier, as you may have guessed. But also there's bosses, so boss fights in the game, and of course depending on your difficulty they will be extremely hard to take down. The full list goes by Doom Hunter, that's the first boss you encounter. Of course they all have an insane amount of health, and some of them may split up into 2, like the Doom Hunter. And then there's Marauder, the Gladiator, Calabas, Khan Maker, and Icon of Sin. Those are all the bosses in the game, but of course there are some DLCs as well, which I haven't got. Lastly, I do want to mention the performance of the game. Now for me personally, I had no issues whatsoever, and I played through a good amount of the game. I didn't like fully finish it, but I was very close to, and I will definitely finish it eventually, because I'm definitely going to carry on playing this game. I loved it. But for my experience, yeah, I didn't experience any bugs or even that many drops in frames, because it's quite a high action, very fast paced game. There's a lot more going on, so the frames may just be always kind of lower than usual because it's always fast, but you don't, you know, instantly notice this significant drop in frames when you go into a boss fight, for example. At least I didn't. There were no bugs as well from what I noticed. I think it may have been a little bit worse when it first launched, which is of course, you know, that's expected, and they have gone on to, you know, patch the game up and update it since then, because it's been, you know, almost 4.5 years, which is crazy to think that. And I think that's where I end my review of Doom Eternal in 2024, and if you do enjoy these type of games, then you'll definitely love this game. And I hope for anyone that, you know, is new to this sort of genre, I hope from this video you've, you know, built an understanding and now have decided if you want to play the game. I definitely recommend it to basically anyone, but I mean, like every game in my reviews, it does depend on the sort of style of games you like, so I hope that I've, you know, made that clear in this video. If you did enjoy it, then let me know by tapping that like button down below, and if you enjoy single player and multiplayer games as well, then that's what this channel focuses on. I have many playlists on a selection of games, so you can subscribe to the channel if you want to, and if you'd like to support me even further, then you can become a member at either level 1 or 2 to gain access to various perks. Then tap the join button below or on the channel. Thank you all for the support and watching until the very end. That was Doom Eternal in 2024, and bye bye.